Hello and welcome to JCRC New York's special briefing on Ukraine. I'm JCRC CEO Gideon Taylor. JCRC serves as New York's primary agency for community relations, working to build relations between the Jewish community and many others across New York City. The pain felt by one community in our interconnected New York is pain felt by us all. What happens in Ukraine affects Jews, Ukrainians, and all New Yorkers. That is why we have come together today to share and to discuss what we can do together in this time of crisis as communities living in New York. We're joined by a number of leaders and community members with a connection to the war in Ukraine who are devoted to bringing support and relief to those who are suffering. But first, we'll have an update on the situation. So we're very honored to be joined today by a longtime friend of JCRC, Congressman Gregory Meeks. He's chair of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs and a senior member of the Financial Services Committee. In Congress, Representative Meeks represents New York's 5th District, which covers Queens and part of Nassau County. Thank you, Congressman Meeks. I know you've been a longtime friend of JCRC and engaged in our work, and we thank you for that long, close working partnership.
Well, you're quite welcome, Mr. Taylor, and welcome and congratulations to you. I look forward to continuing to work with JCRC and you in particular. So hopefully sometimes really soon we'll get to see and meet each other in person, but we'll work very closely together.
Thank you. We look forward to it. We look forward to it. So much in common that we have. So today we really want to turn to the issue that's of such deep concern to the whole world. And specifically, you obviously are at a pivotal place, not only obviously with your role in New York, but in your critical position as chair of the Foreign Relations Committee. And what we want to do is to look today, we're going to gather later some leaders from the Ukrainian community in New York, from Jewish community in New York, because this is an issue that affects all of us in New York as well. And so many people have so many connections and relations to Ukraine. So just really wanted to start by asking you, well, what do you see, how do you see this developing, and how do you see the situation going? And we're all so concerned.
Well, I think there's reason to be concerned. I wish I didn't have to say that, but it is. As you may know, I just returned from Poland last week, about a week ago. And to say the least, it was heartbreaking to see the number of individuals who are refugees crossing the border into Poland from Ukraine, primarily women and children, not knowing what lies ahead, what their future is, not knowing when or if they'll ever go back to their homes and their normal ways of life, not knowing whether or not many of them will see their husbands or their fathers again, because only primarily women and children and those that are infirmed. No men, unless you were over the age of 60, were allowed to cross the borders. People cold, hungry, some walking for days to get to the border. It was heartbreaking. And as you may know, the numbers, we were there when we landed, it was 700,000 refugees that had gone into Poland. We were there 2.5 days. And by the time we were leaving, it had been another, it was up to 1.2 million, and it's continuing. And we're looking at second and third waves. The people of Poland has been just absolutely fantastic. The number of volunteers that were at the borders trying to help give children toys and blankets and food, and people trying to, help folks get to shelters, some bringing people to their homes to stay. But to think of what is happening there, all because of the aggression of a person who I believe is evil, Vladimir Putin, is heartbreaking. And it reminds me of the horror that took place in the late 30s and 40s. We've not seen anything like that since then. And it's heartbreaking in that regards. I'll also say that we met with governors from both the Polish side and the Ukrainian side of the borders. And one of the things that is absolutely clear is the will of the Ukrainian people, to citizens, to fight for themselves. They were just hugging and thanking us. It was a bipartisan delegation that was there for all that we had done and will be doing and continue to do to be helpful. They were just asking for more ammunition so that they can defend themselves. And they were determined that we don't need any troops on the ground or anything of that nature, that we will fight for our own sovereignty and for our democracy. And I guess just tell you that we had about 8 people in the delegation, and there was nothing for many of us to do but to cry, to be quite frankly. And I just had to grab the governor and just hug him because of his focus on saving his country and fighting Putin, who is the one person responsible for this humanitarian crisis.
And I'm sure that I know that your presence there was such a sign of support for those in Ukraine and Poland. How do you see the role of the U.S., of the administration, Congress, going forward at this point to address the crisis?
Well, just last week in Congress, we passed a budget of almost $14 billion, $13.7 billion to give and more lethal defensive weapons to Ukraine, also to help with the humanitarian crisis that has evolved. Just yesterday, Secretary Blinken announced that we're going to do another $200 million in defense for Ukraine, including for military education and training. And President Biden directed the funding via memorandum authorizing the use of the drawdown authority. So we're going to continue to give Ukraine what it needs to defend itself. We are working collaboratively with our NATO allies in that regard. And I think that the president has worked to make sure that we've all stayed united. And you know that, well, you may not know, but while we were in Poland last week, we had an address from President Zelensky of Ukraine, which was, went a long way of what his viewpoint is. And we will be having another address with President Zelensky to listen to his concerns and needs on Wednesday morning when Congress convenes. I know the key issue, and one of the things that he's been asking for is a no-fly zone, which is very difficult to do because of the concerns of violating or escalating, I should say, the situation, and thereby could cause what we would know as World War III, because if an American pilot or someone, one of our NATO allies, was involved and or shot down, and we have to shoot a Russian plane down, then that brings into play Article 5 of the NATO treaty, and so we would virtually be in war. That being said, and I say that in the context of what has been getting a lot of publicity is whether or not the United States should allow Poland to give the Meeks jets to Ukraine so that they can fly their planes and, in effect, create their own no-fly zone. Because when I was there, they were talking about we didn't need American pilots or NATO pilots. They would send their own pilots to Poland and pick up the jets and fly them back themselves. I think that, we heard Secretary Blinken the next day, but we had a conversation with Secretary Blinken that very day that we landed. And we thought that there was going to be an agreement in that regards, because all of us want to make sure that we give Ukraine everything they need to defend themselves. Issues popped up thereafter, because I think the Poles did not want to be the ones to deliver the planes directly to Ukrainians. And so what they had proposed then was to have the planes flown to Germany, put them in USA hands, and let the USA deliver the planes to Ukraine. Again, that's a problem, in that regards, because it then could be that we now have engaged in an actual war with Russia. So we're still trying, everything I think is still on the table. We're trying to work things out so that Ukraine has what it needs to defend its skies, and there's some alternative means of which is being looked at. And we'll hear President Zelensky, as I said, on Wednesday, but I know that the United States Congress will do anything and everything that we can to make sure that we give the resources that's needed to Ukrainians and the Ukrainian military so they can fight and defend themselves. There's no question and no hesitation about that from the entire Congress, but especially from the members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And as I said, the vote that we had last week on the money and what it was to be utilized for, as well as my delegation that traveled, was a bipartisan delegation. So we were all collectively together in that regards on the in the U.S. Congress. Where we do and have further conversations with some is how and when and what do we do with reference to the Meeks, and I think that we'll try to figure that out.
So, and Congressman, thank you so much for your leadership and doing it in such a bipartisan way on this issue as in so many others. Last question, I just wanted to ask you, we here in New York, the JCRC, are partnering and connecting with Ukrainian organizations in New York, with Jewish Ukrainians, with Ukrainians of other faiths. There's been an outreach and outpouring of support. UJ Federation has led an important effort, as have others. What can we do as New Yorkers to try to help? And what should we be thinking about and doing as concerned New Yorkers?
Well, humanitarian aid, however and whatever that we can do to make sure that we're sending to Poland and or be able to get things across the border to Ukraine, so that those people are suffering. It's human suffering. I saw a program, and particularly, what's critical and hard is here you have Putin calling the president of Ukraine a Nazi. He's Jewish. And they're bombing Jewish memorials in the Ukraine. And when you look at and think about the suffering that Jewish people paid in Ukraine and Poland during World War II and what was leading up to it, it's horrific. And there's many people who are now elderly who survived the Holocaust that still have nothing. And some still fearful of even let others knowing that they're Jewish because of what they saw themselves. And then to have this going on now, and some of these communities are being bombed by Putin. If he is not an evil person that is committing war crimes, I don't know what it is. So whatever support that we can figure out in that regards that can go to the people of Ukraine and or right across the border to Poland. And what we're trying to do is to work out in the United States Congress, because I do believe that we need to take in our fair share of refugees here in the United States also. So we try to work on those numbers and figure out what that process is. But once we do that, I think it would be good, and I'll come to JCRC to see if we can welcome and bring or sponsor some of the refugees from the Ukraine right here in New York. And I look forward to working with you to get that done.
Well, thank you again for really all that you have done for New York, for our Jewish community, and now for Ukraine and those suffering in Ukraine. We look forward to welcoming you, to seeing you in person, and to continuing these conversations. Thank you again for joining us and for all that you're doing.
Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. We're now joined by a distinguished panel of community members. Every member of the panel today has a unique role in fighting against this terrible war in Ukraine, whether they're Jewish, a Ukrainian, a New Yorker, supporting this cause. The mission of JCRC is to unite communities from all backgrounds and experiences within New York City, and that's exactly why we wanted to gather today to talk about what's happening in Ukraine. So firstly, let me introduce those who've gathered with us today for this event and this opportunity to come together. Firstly, Rabbi Michael Schudrich is the Chief Rabbi of Poland, as well as a member of the Rabbinical Council of America and the Conference of European Rabbis. He's been very engaged in helping Ukrainian refugees, Jewish, non-Jewish refugees arrive safely in Poland. Councilwoman Carlina Rivera represents the 2nd District, which covers the historic Ukrainian village neighborhood of New York City's East Village, as well as a thriving modern-day Ukrainian community. Councilman Ari Kagan was born in Belarus and immigrated with his family to New York in 1993. He spent time in Ukraine. He represents the 47th District, covering the heavily Ukrainian and Russian neighborhoods of southern Brooklyn. We're also joined today by Arthur Zgurov, who immigrated to the United States from Odessa, where he worked as a doctor. He currently serves as the chief spokesman and rally organizer for Razom for Ukraine, an important organization, has been instrumental in the organization's response to the ongoing war in Ukraine. Also with us, Yaroslav Palilik, who was raised in a deeply Ukrainian environment here in Yonkers, New York. He served as the Westchester branch president of the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, which has also taken a very prominent role in speaking on behalf of the Ukrainian community concerning the horrific events in Ukraine. Finally, on the panel, Mohammed Razvi is the executive director of the Council of People's Organizations, which assists low-income immigrant families reach their full potential. Residents of New York, he's a longtime partner and friend of JCRC, and as the head of COPO, he's currently directly engaged with ground relief efforts for Ukrainians in New York on behalf of all New Yorkers. So I really just wanted to sort of throw this open for a sort of a discussion to get these different perspectives, and maybe starting with Rabbi Schudrich. I think you're off screen, maybe. There we are, we see you. Maybe you can sort of fill us in on what is going on now at the border and some of the work of what you've been doing. Thank you, Rabbi, for joining us.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Gideon. Thank you, everyone, for listening. It is absolutely essential. I just want to re-emphasize what Gideon said, that on a good day, we need all to be together. On a crisis like we have now, we really need to be together. It's so important that the JCRC is able to bring together all of us to talk about this horrible tragedy of the Russian aggression in the Ukraine. So I can say a little bit about what the Jewish community here is doing. Because the general situation, I think people pretty much know. I can give 30 seconds. It's horrific. I mean, Russia is just bombing the Ukraine, not, civilian targets, city targets. For example, I know that I'm close with the Jewish organization Hillel, which deals with university students and postgraduate students. And the Hillel Center in Kharkiv is now no longer there. It's been bombed out. Babi Yar was bombed. And many, many other places. These are just the places that I personally know about. And so on the second day of the war, the first day was Thursday. On Friday, the different Jewish organizations in Poland called together a meeting. It was a Zoom meeting, as we do nowadays. And everyone got together and said, okay, listen, we need to work together to help the refugees. And of course, nobody had any idea on the second day of the war how horrific it would be. We thought, there would be some thousands, we don't know, but and I kept saying, I started looking for places to house refugees a week before the war, because it was pretty clear that there was a chance that Putin would really invade. And so we were getting prepared, but everyone is shocked at the level of what's happening. And I would say that I am very pleasantly shocked that the Polish government has been so supportive of the Ukrainian refugees. And we in Poland, we have accepted something like in excess of 1.5 million. In excess of 1.5 million refugees, which is just amazing. And we are here, we the Jewish community and the Christian community and many NGOs, we are here to help everybody. When people ask me, well, how do you know if they're Jewish or not? I say, we don't. We help whoever comes to us for help. And I say that if you want to know, I don't know who's Jewish and who's not. We help people in need. But I can guarantee one thing, every person we need was created by God. And that's the people that we help. We help anyone who's created by God. So what are we doing? We have people from the very beginning at the border, helping people to get from the border to wherever they need to go. We then also created the first day of the war, a hotline, and put it out in 4 languages, Ukrainian, Russian, English, and Polish, that if you need help, call this number. The number is working 24/7, and we have merited to help guide hundreds of refugees and answer whatever questions they may have to the best of our ability. We also have just a few days ago sent 2 RV vans down to the two major border crossings just to help refugees when they come across. Now, there are other NGOs doing that already, but we felt our place is also at the border. We can't let just other people do it. We need to do it also. We have now found housing. We're housing in our facilities, in 4 different Jewish facilities in Poland, over 250 refugees, including one where I'm sitting right now, which is in the Yeshivat Chachmi Lublin, the former yeshiva building of Lublin, which part of it was converted several years ago into a hotel. We stopped already 2 weeks ago accepting clients, and we only housing here refugees, and that's our plan as long as it's necessary. And there are 3 more places besides this. In addition, we're working very hard to provide food for everybody needs. Also, I think that people don't always realize that when people left, they left with a suitcase if they were lucky. And now all of a sudden they have a suitcase and they have to have a life. And so people need clothing, people need sanitary goods, need Pampers, anything that's shampoo. And so we have been one of the central collection points where people are donating, and we're simply, which is also heartwarming in this horrible situation, that is heartwarming that we're simply overwhelmed with donations. We're also helping getting medical help, legal help, and very important psychological help. Everyone who left went through a terrible trauma. Almost everyone that left somebody behind. The men between the ages of 18 and 60 had to remain behind, fighting the war. And so everyone has a son, a father, a husband, a boyfriend that's back in the Ukraine fighting. And the trip to the border was horrendous. crossing the border was arduous because it would take sometimes up to 3, even 4 days just standing online in the cold. And then trying to figure out what you're going to do, where you're going, what are you doing? I mean, I made it, I'm alive, I'm safe, but what's next? And so we're also trying to help with psychological counseling, kind of not even counseling this, but just intervention to help people, feel some sense of stability in their lives when there is no stability.
Wow.
I think I spoke for long enough.
Yeah, no. I want to circle around, but I want to come back because I think people also may have questions as well for you. This is also a discussion I want to hear, and I know there's a lot of this is a conversation as well. So and what you're doing is just heroic, and I know that organizations here, the UJ Federation and others, have raised funds and are funding this real work. It's just heroic work. So let me turn now to.
And I'm sorry. If I may, and I want to say thank you to New York Federation, to Card Foundation, to World Zionist Organization, the World Mizrahi. Everybody's giving now.
Terrific.
Now I'm quiet.
Thanks. We'll circle back. So maybe sort of Councilwoman Rivera. So you obviously have a historic connection through your district. How do you see this? You've obviously been very emotionally involved in this issue through the district, and just maybe share with us your thoughts.
Thank you for the question. It certainly has been an emotional time. Ukraine is a beautiful, sovereign nation that is deserving of sustained independence and peace. And as we are having this discussion, Ukraine remains alone and unsupported in their defense against a brutal and senseless attack that has enormous implications for all of us across the globe. And that this crisis is very much felt right here in New York City. The families who are in Little Ukraine in an area that I represent. I'm very humbled to be the councilwoman representing Little Ukraine. It's a vibrant and resilient community with generations of history in the East Village, from self-reliance and that amazing network and institution to St. George Ukrainian Catholic Church. This neighborhood is home to so many of the Ukrainian community in New York City. And so this is a neighborhood that is built on the backs of Ukrainian refugees, and so many residents still have family and loved ones back in Ukraine. And my heart is with them every hour of every single day as we all wait for the latest reports. And even watching the news has been so gut-wrenching, and many people just still have questions. And I think the pride that is here is so strong, and their support for their community is so inspiring. And for weeks now, the East Village has been flooded with Ukrainian flags hanging in shop windows and from fire escapes. And neighbors greet each other with the cheer and the promise of glory to Ukraine. And when we cheer glory to Ukraine, we are cheering for glory to all of those who would defend democracy and freedom for all of us. And so I owe a debt of gratitude to our friends that are here today in this discussion, who are part of this esteemed panel. Of course, the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, tireless organizing and advocacy that has been invaluable to the Ukrainian community in my district and throughout New York City. And, we have community leaders who have been longtime partners. We're so grateful for those continued efforts. And I'm sure that you'll hear more from my colleagues about what action they're taking on the ground. But I want everyone here to know today that any efforts to aid the Ukrainian community in New York City have my full and unwavering support. And my team and I are eager and willing to do whatever we can to assist those efforts. So we've mentioned, aside from collecting resources and supplies to aid refugees overseas, we're also prepared to welcome refugees here in New York City. There are people who are here already, and we have to ramp up our ability to house and care for them. And so temporary protected status has been granted, and we know there are people that are here already. We just don't know how many. And so the federal government should have those numbers, and we will continue to ask for clarity so that we can best serve our communities. And that goes for my colleague in the city council, who has also done tremendous work. I know the American Immigration Council, they estimate that of the hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian immigrants in the United States, about maybe 34,000 of them do not have defined immigration status. That's 34,000 people who would benefit from this TPS designation, but they may need our help to do so. So what we can do in the council is we can direct funding and resources to existing working groups for Ukrainian American legal services. And we must do everything in our power at the city level to ensure adequate support is provided to organizations like JCRC, like the Council of People's Organization, who are already doing work on the ground to ensure that refugees entering under TPS are welcomed and supported. And, you know, we've seen a lot of inquiries from local families, include requests for free and legal immigration assistance, some sort of knowledge on how to navigate what can be a very, very bureaucratic system, and sometimes not the friendliest to people who don't speak English as their first language. We received inquiries regarding housing concerns for anyone who might come to New York City. And of course, questions as to where anyone can receive free or low cost healthcare, including that mental health support for New Yorkers as young as 5 years old. There are many, you know, babies, young children asking questions about what's going on at home, what's happening to grandma and grandpa and other loved ones and family members. And so that has been a very, very emotional those have been very, very emotional conversations. So I know that in New York, we pride ourselves as a very welcoming place, a sanctuary city that where people can get the care that they need without fear. And so there are many city services that are available no matter your immigration status. And so we want to ensure that that I myself are directly responding to my constituents and their extended family across the city. And of course, as a city, that we step up and provide the funding and resources that are necessary.
Great, thank you, thank you. So let me turn to Councilmember Kagan. Ari, you this must be for you also deeply emotional. How to tell us a little bit about how you feel about and how you see this this developing, please.
Thank you very much, Gideon. Thank you so much, JCRC, for having this discussion on this forum, and thank you to my colleague, Councilmember Carolina Rivera, and to all of you. And some of you I know, like Mohammed Razvi, for many years for working with people of many communities and now helping Ukraine. And I know many Ukrainian organizations as well. I would like to say that I studied for 4 years in Lviv, in Western Ukraine. I have many friends in Kyiv, in Odessa, and some other cities. And it's very painful what's going on. And what I would like to add that every time dictator, every time person who considers himself above everybody else saying, I'm gonna kill people, I'm gonna occupy this country, I'm gonna kill Jews, I'm gonna kill Ukrainians, I'm gonna occupy Ukraine. We have to believe in it. We have to believe. Like when Hitler said he's gonna kill all Jews, final solution, people said, no, come on, it's not possible. So when Putin said what he said, many people said, no, it's not gonna happen. Now he's saying he will occupy the entire Ukraine. He's saying he will occupy Western Ukraine. He's threatening Poland. He's talking about Narva in Estonia. He's saying he can use nuclear weapons against the United States of America. And we should not be laughing at this point. He can do everything he said he wants to do, because he's doing this exactly what he said he wants to do. So we have to believe and we have to prepare for it. So on my angle, I believe it's not enough for me to say that I'm in solidarity with Ukraine. Yes, I did host a rally in solidarity with Ukraine in my district in Vorbas neighborhood. But I believe we need to do more. We did already several resolutions in New York City Council. And of course, Carolina Rivera and several other council members supported this resolution. But I believe we can and we can do much more. So for example, I have good relationship with our congressional delegation. So I talked to Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. I talked to Congresswoman Yvette Clark. I talked to Senator Charles Schumer. And I gave them some ideas that could be done very quickly, not in a few months, in a few days I'm talking about. still, even now, there are people who applied to come to America as a family reunification program. Family reunification program, legally. They applied 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and they're still waiting. Still no immigration relief to them. It could be done in 1 day. Just speed up the process, that's all. I'm not even talking about new legislation. I'm talking about existing legislation. People who have close relatives here in New York City are still waiting for their relatives to come. Also, like, I don't know what Congress is waiting for. I hope we will not repeat the situation that happened with St. Louis ship during the World War II, when like a ship with Jewish refugees from Germany was sent back to Germany. And you know what happened to all of these passengers? Everybody was killed in concentration camps. We're not going to turn it back. We need to, as soon as possible, the TPS is good. It's the first step. It helps Ukrainians who are already here in New York City and in America not to be deported, but it's just the first step. How about people who are like calling me every day, oh, my relatives in Moldova, oh, my relatives in Lviv, my relatives in Romania, in Poland. What about them? How long are we going to wait to pass another legislation to say yes, of course? For how long? Until everybody would be killed in Ukraine? What are we doing? In terms of assisting Ukraine, we're saying, oh, it's difficult to send this, it's difficult to send that. I was on a Zoom and Mohammed Razvi was there. They're asking for drones, intelligence drones that could be operated even when there is no electricity in the city. It could be done pretty quickly. We can send drones. It will help Ukrainian army. So like, again, a lot of debates about like long term, but I'm talking about like days. I'm not talking about months, you know, like what could be done immediately. Of course, I would like to praise every partner, every community leader who stands with Ukraine and who is organizing like collection, including NYPD, by the way. In our area, NYPD helped to collect all of these boxes with goods, which was very helpful. 60th precinct, 61st precinct, which is very, very helpful. But it's still, in my opinion, not enough is done. Absolutely not enough. We can do much more on the congressional level, and on our city level, we have to take care of our immigrants who are already here. Talking about psychological trauma, a lot of people are under huge, humongous stress. In the first 2 days of the war, I couldn't sleep myself. Like I was every day, like someone bombing like my apartment, you know, like that's how I feel. So like I was glad that Mayor Eric Adams visited Coney Island Hospital and met with staff. 25% of Coney Island Hospital staff came from Ukraine. So of course, president of Coney Island Hospital, CEO Svetlana Lipyanska, she is immigrant from Odessa. Her family is from Odessa. So my point is, a lot of people here in New York City feel the connection. They have to receive help, psychological help. They need to feel that they're supported, not just by powers, but by everybody. And we also need to fight this Putin propaganda. Even now, right now in New York City, you can easily buy Russian language newspaper called Argumenты и Fakты. This is arguments and facts. You know what I'm talking about. Complete propaganda, complete nonsense. You still can watch, not on Optimum anymore, but on some other internet retranslator providers, you can still watch Channel 1 from Russia. And yes, one brave woman over there get behind the so-called journalist and bravely put a banner. It's all lie and propaganda. But they're brainwashing people here in America. And I know it because I talk to people who were brainwashed, who believe that in Ukraine you cannot speak Russian, who believe that like it's a neo-Nazis, who believe that like Jews are under attack by Ukrainians in Ukraine. I'm telling them, what are you talking about? Why do you believe Putin propaganda? Ukraine elected Jewish president. Ukraine had a prime minister, Grossman, you know, and like talking about anti-Semitism, like in the last 2 years in Brooklyn, were several times more anti-Semitic incidents than in entire Ukraine. So my point is, we need to fight this propaganda here in Brooklyn, here in New York, here in America. It's still, Putin is very active right here in America with anti-Western, anti-American, anti-Ukraine propaganda right now as we speak. Very, very active. And we just started to do something about it. Another angle, like there is no differentiation between who speaks what language. As you know, Putin is bombing everybody in Ukraine. Ukrainians, Russians, Jews, you name it, everybody. So That's why it's so important to differentiate. If you speak Russian in New York City, it doesn't mean this person who speaks Russian. I do speak Russian. I have a TV show in Russian language every Friday right now. And what I'm saying to you, I'm saying to hundreds of thousands of people. And as I have done for the last 22 years. But again, like everybody, it doesn't mean if person speaks Russian, this person is against Ukraine. Absolutely not. Completely opposite. And what we see sometimes in some restaurants and some businesses, they're like vandalized, etc., because someone assumed that they're against Ukraine, assumed that they're against America. Their owners are like going with Ukrainian flags and donated money to Ukrainian charities and helping Ukraine every day. So it should be clear line of differentiation. And like, again, the line is not between who speaks Russian and who speaks Ukrainian. The line is between, as I said in City Council, and Carolina can attest to it, this is not a fight between Russia and Ukraine. All decent people of the world, decent people, are on the side of Ukraine. It's a fight between darkness and light. And that's how we should see this war. It's not a conflict, it's aggression. So I would like to praise everybody. I know JCRC has a huge program, and I know UJA Federation is working very hard to transport all goods and assistance to Ukraine. So all hands on deck. If I need to do something more, let me know. I would really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who is involved in this amazing human effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think your point that this is all of us together, different parts of the community in New York, just together. Yaroslav, maybe you can just give us a little of your how you see this and how you see from the point of view of the community here, and share with us, please.
Sure, thank you. I'd like to first thank JCRC and all of you for being on today. To give you a little history of what's happened in the last 20 days. We've all seen that Putin and Russia have decided that they want to put back the Soviet Union with their actions and unprovoked attack on a free and democratic Ukraine. We've all seen the terrible images on TV and the internet. They're horrific. Families are being torn apart, innocents, women, children, civilians, all being targeted and killed by this madman and his accomplices. Just recently, there was a pseudo ceasefire declared in Mariupol for civilians to be able to leave, and Russia started to shoot these poor civilians fleeing their homes. Russia should now be added to the list of sponsors of state terrorism. I think we all agree on that, but it hasn't happened. This is not a reunification of Russian-speaking people to the homeland. It's not a liberation of Russians from any Nazi regime. I think we all understand that if Russia is saving Ukraine from some genocidal regime, why are all the people fleeing to the west and not to the east? Kremlin has claimed that Russia's invasion of Ukraine is aimed at the so-called demilitarization and denazification. Regarding this denazification, the chief Rabbi Bleich of Ukraine, and I'm sure Rabbi Michael knows him, he tweeted, "The Jewish community is an integral part of Ukraine and stands with the Ukrainian people, government, and armed forces in defending Ukraine. The government of Ukraine has stood by the Jewish community since Ukraine became independent in 1991. And he then added, it has defended and befriended the Jewish community. And I don't need to remind you that the president and former prime minister of Ukraine are Jewish, as Ari mentioned before. NATO states that a no-fly zone would be an unacceptable escalation with Russia. Does that policy stand if Putin goes full scale like he did in Aleppo and Grozny, where he killed the innocent civilian population to gain control of these areas? Is there a fixed body count of civilian Ukrainians where NATO changes its mind? Are we going to wait until all the hospitals, maternity wards, and orphanages get destroyed? There's many reports of Ukrainian men coming from all over Europe where they've lived and worked for many years. They're going back to fight for a free and independent Ukraine. Is this not a country of patriots that wants to defend democracy? Is this not a country that deserves to be in NATO? For those who say NATO's involvement would start World War III, we're already there. It's the same playbook that Hitler used until the world woke up. President Zelensky in a statement condemned NATO's decision to not close the sky over Ukraine and said, today the alliance just gave a green light to the further bombardment of Ukrainian cities, towns, and villages. Zelensky, not mincing his criticism, also said that every person who dies from today will die because of you. When I wrote the speech over a week ago and was able to speak to people in Connecticut, in Westport, in Fairfield, in Greenwich, and in Westchester, I was hoping that our wish and want list would have changed and we could check off the things that are needed to be done. But sadly, the list is shorter, but still mostly intact. We appreciate the work that our representatives in government have done here in the US, but it's still not enough. So I have a list of things that you can do as an American citizen. We ask that you join Ukrainians and their supporters locally, nationally, and around the world during their demonstrations. We need to ask for more bipartisan political support. Reach out to the White House, your senators, your representatives, and major news outlets. We need to tell President Biden and the administration and the US government to stop purchasing all Russian oil. It is morally indefensible. The sale, purchase, and transport of that oil is still happening. We need urgent military air dome defense systems or more military air dome defense systems that have not been provided. We need extensive support with lethal military defense equipment, and we must remove Russia from the UN Security Council. They are not a positive force there. International courts must condemn Putin and adopt procedures to sentence him as a war criminal and for crimes against humanity. We must work on the social media aspect in Russia, shut it down. We must impose more sanctions against Russian politicians, oligarchs, and others who openly support Putin. And ladies and gentlemen, President Zelensky just today, speaking to the Canadian Parliament, said, please close the skies, stop the bombing. Putin will not stop unless we close the skies. With regard to our organization, Ukrainian Congress Committee, we are an umbrella organization, and I'm sure many of you have worked with our members and our administration. We'd like to thank Razom for Ukraine as an amazing young organization here in the US that is doing incredible things in Ukraine and Poland right now. But for God's sake, please talk to everyone, all the companies individually who are doing business in Russia. They must immediately shut down all operations in Russia. We as an organization at ucca.org have a humanitarian aid fund. We've raised a lot of money, but it's not enough. Razom for Ukraine also has their own website that they're raising money for. We also support an organization called Revive Soldiers for Ukraine. It's rsukraine.org, who is helping soldiers with injuries as well as providing humanitarian aid. And lastly, we all must pray for Ukraine. There was a Georgian commander fighting with the Ukrainian army that stated that we're fighting for Ukraine and we're willing to give up our lives to stop this barbarian Putin. Everyone in the world must be able to risk something. All the good people, as you all mentioned, must be able to risk something to stop him. We hope that the outrage that the world is expressing, including in Russia, can stop Putin and his terrorist activities. Last week, we had the opportunity to have an auto rally from Yonkers to the Russian diplomatic residence in Riverdale. At that rally, Rabbi Avi Weiss, who is now one of my best friends, said it best. Today, we are all Ukrainian. And in the words of one of the most famous Ukrainian poets and bards for freedom, Taras Shevchenko, "Borітеся, поборете." In translation, he said, fight on because you shall overcome. Let me just add that tomorrow, I'm sure some of you have seen this, but tomorrow we are getting together with the Rabbi Avi Weiss and his fellow rabbis, and we ask that you join us as we raise a voice of moral conscience and tell the United States we must do even more to help Ukraine and Ukrainian refugees. We are meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. on 45th Street and First Avenue in New York City in front of the United States mission to the UN. Please join us.
Thank you. Thank you. Arthur, you grew up in Odessa. It's a town I know, a city I know. I spent a lot of time in Ukraine in my earlier career in a number of the cities I've seen about in the news. I've traveled extensively. Odessa was one of them, where you were born. Tell us, it's been a tough, difficult time, and maybe you can share with us your thoughts.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank everyone for this opportunity to talk, to speak, to address people. a lot of wise words were said. Big thanks to Rabbi, big thanks to councilman, councilwoman, to our fellow Ukrainian organization, to Jewish community, to representatives of free world. Yes, indeed, I was born in Odessa, Ukraine. Yes, I came here 2.5 years ago. And yes, as all Ukrainians, I could not stand the news about about the invasion, about the horrible war that is going on right now. That is true that 2 days, maybe even more, I couldn't sleep. My wife couldn't sleep. That's for sure. But again, tough times requires actions. And being a Ukrainian, I couldn't stay still. And I joined Razom for Ukraine to do my part in our fight, because that's true. There are no more civilians in this fight right now. We're all soldiers. Every Ukrainian is a soldier. Every single person who supports Ukraine is a soldier as well. So our organization, Razom for Ukraine, as Mr. Palilik mentioned, we indeed do a lot of work organizing funds, sending help to refugees in Europe, helping refugees that came to United States. We organize help to our armed forces, Ukrainian armed forces as well. And after several days of this horrible war, we decided to expand our expand things that we do and start working with communities. We started working with public opinion. We started organizing rallies. Every Saturday there's a rally on Times Square. So I would like to invite everyone who wants to come. There are lots of people, and it's very beautiful gathering of beautiful people of beautiful colors of blue and yellow. As well, we started working on petitions and initiatives to outreach government. So that is one thing that we are working on right now, is a petition to help Ukraine. That's true. Horrible things are going on. Our president, our politicians, they all members of Ukrainian community in general, we all say, and we all actually, sorry for being a straightforward person, but Ukrainians are pretty straightforward. That's a feature that helps us to fight. We demand from the world, although being grateful for the help, we demand to close the sky. That is vital. Understanding the consequences. There is another option. You know, if you don't want to close the sky using NATO forces, that's fine. We are all intelligent people. We understand probable consequences. So give us weapons. There have been lots of rumors that giving weapons, especially airplanes, to Ukraine will be foreseen by Russia as a direct invasion of NATO into this war. But again, let's take a look at Turkey, that gives us Bayraktars, the famous drones that help Ukrainian army. They sell it to Ukraine. So I understand that bureaucracy is a very complicated thing, but bureaucracy can be defeated in such horrible times, because we indeed have to stand together. All peoples of all communities, especially Ukrainian community, people of New York City. You know, being a rally organizer, I never ever thought that it would be such a pleasant thing to work with representatives of New York City. And I'm not talking only about people from different political spheres. I'm talking about NYPD as well. My greatest thanks to NYPD. They are helping a lot. They're supporting us. All people of New York City supporting us. Multicultural, multinational city. It supports us. We understand that New York City today is blue and yellow, as well as a lot of other people, a lot of other cities around the world. So, as I said before, a lot of wise words were said today, and we are very grateful to every person, to every organization, to every single individual in the world, in the United States, that supports us. We are very grateful to United States government for this tremendous support that they give us. But again, I told you before, and I will repeat it right now. Ukrainians are very straightforward. We really need this help. We really need airplanes, and we are working on it right now. I mean, Razum for Ukraine, we are working on petition, we are working with public opinion to spread the word and to make White House, Senate to take actions regarding airplanes or anti-aircraft defense systems. This is the main thing that Ukraine needs right now. It's literally to close the sky, and we will do this on our own. And to finish my speech, I would like to use wise words of a person, of Rabbi Noah Weinberg, who said, people often avoid making decisions out of fear of making mistake. Actually, failure to make a decision is one of life's biggest mistakes. Don't be afraid to make a decision. We are all in this together. We stand for Ukraine. We stand for the world. The whole world is watching us right now. We will win, but now it is the question of the cost. How many people will die? Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Thank you. So lastly, I want to turn to Mo. You've come to this with a little bit of a different perspective. Just maybe you can share with us a little bit of what's brought you to engagement in this issue.
So let me start off with the fact that, I come from a third world country, Pakistan. When we left that country, me and my mom and my dad and my brothers, we basically ran from oppression on the Shia community and other things that were happening at that moment. And as we came into the United States for the freedom and everything that we are working here, working hard and trying to, live our lives, we realized that, this is the place where anyone can actually voice their concerns about other countries of the world and what's happening. Here, I started this office, Council of People's Organization, to help people, just to, it was supposed to be a temporary organization, but it turned out to be a permanent organization. And I actually have traveled to Russia. I've traveled to Munich, and I had the opportunity to visit Auschwitz, where those concentration camps were. And I can't even explain to you the effect that it had on me, where how one person can go so far in destroying communities and individuals and families and not, such loss of human life. And when this aggression started and, it was coming into effect, I could not believe it. I was like, oh my God, this looks like, back again, like Hitler. What's going on? How could this happen? And it just broke my heart to see so much human loss right away, and how people were struggling, trying to flee, and they're still struggling. It went from, and I remember I was watching the news, it went from 200,000, 500,000 to 1 million to 1.5. Now it's up to 3 million. And they're saying it can go up to 9 million. And I just could not believe it. And I called up my dear friend, his name is Lenny Bard, who actually I traveled to Russia with. And I worked with many Ukrainians at that time and rabbis. We traveled and we were talking about how to get engagement with Russian government and Muslim community leaders, Jewish community leaders, and others. And that's what was the discussion we were having 10 years ago. And this pin that I got here for Ukraine and America was at that time. And I called up Lenny and I said, how can I help? He goes, I have no space. I have nothing here in New York. So we dedicated our office space, which is about, total is 20,000 square feet. We dedicated our 10,000 square foot space. And we actually been working with Ari Kagan and other city council members. And I'm just holding this up and I'm gonna try to share it from my.
We're going to share it on the screen in a minute. So
yeah, and I'm going to send it to you. And I was very fortunate with the JCRC, UJA, and AFIA, who actually is going to be working with us to transport the goods. We have approximately almost a full trailer load of goods. And when I say goods, I mean from baby diapers to baby wipes to adult diapers, first aid kits, personal hygiene kits, everything that our rabbi had mentioned, the things that are needed. And it's not just a Muslim community. It's not just a Christian community. It's all communities of, good people who actually see this aggression, as Ari has repeatedly said, decent people who are like very concerned and very upset. And it's brought together New Yorkers and Brooklynites together. I mean, and they're just coming together, trying to make sure, because Ukraine is our partner, and Ukrainians that are living here. I've worked with Ukrainians, and they're wonderful people. And it's been multiple years. I mean, it's been at least 20 years just with Ari and with JCRC. And, it's those things that we need to stand together. And if we don't, first they came for, other people. Then there's a saying, and then they came for someone else. And then when they came for me, nobody was left.
And Sam Bike, Sam Bike, if I would mention it. Sam Bike is working with you as well. He's from Odessa. He's a Holocaust survivor from Bogdanovka. He's like, every day he's trying to help people of Ukraine in many different ways.
Yeah, even today before I got to this conference, when I went to Mitai called me, he goes, he has so much stuff. And, I went there with a truck, I loaded up the truck and, brought the goods here so we can send it out. But the important thing is all New Yorkers, all Americans are going to stand with Ukraine, and we need to move forward.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing. What I want to do is I want to share on the screen just some of the ways that people can help, because we've heard a lot, and I just want to flag a few. There are many different ways. If you look at the screen, maybe we can just share on it. So firstly, United Jewish Appeal, Federation of New York has a fund where many people in the Jewish community and others have donated to carry out, to send help. Also, the two organizations on the screen, you can see now our two friends here from Ukraine. If we can just look at that slide, you can see their email for Razom and for the Ukrainian Congress Committee, both at their websites, also receiving help. And you can see them there. And then thirdly, I want to just the slide you just saw, the picture of the poster from the wonderful work that COPO is doing, and we're proud as JCRC to sponsor that. And thank you, Mo, for really everything you're doing. People can help through COPO. And so finally, that was a lot of information. The last slide is the JCRC website, and if you go to the JCR website, there'll be a copy of this session, of this gathering here, where people can watch, can see, can learn, and learn how to help further and to reach and to work with the incredible agencies and individuals that are working. So I want to just bring this to a close with ask Rabbi Schudrich to give us a few sort of last words. I don't know if we're asking for a blessing, for encouragement, but for obviously, as you just heard in this brief conversation, the care and concern that there is in New York. And you're originally a New Yorker, so you know New York well.
I'm still a New Yorker.
Still a New Yorker. You're a person of many places. Maybe you can just share a few last thoughts for us on as we struggle with this crisis.
So it's a very difficult time, and one of the typical classic ways Jews deal with crisis: first we organize and we help, and then we also make jokes. So it reminds me of the ask for a blessing. I thought of the blessing from Fiddler on the Roof about, is there a blessing for the Tsar? So I would say, is there a blessing for Putin? And that would be, may God bless and keep Putin far away from us. But now to be serious, first I want to thank everyone else here on the panel for all you're doing. It's amazing. I mean, here we have the opportunity really to be on the front line. And I have to say, I'm very proud of our small Jewish community that really has risen to the occasion, that we are helping, as I said before, others, other Jews and other human beings. Anyone that needs help, we want to be there to help. And so it's difficult to sum it up and put it into one statement. I thought that I would simply read to you, and And I just want to add, that people are actually giving up their apartments. Kids are moving back in with parents to make the apartment available for refugees to live. And so one of the refugees that we're helping, one of the, just our little community is helping hundreds of refugees to find housing and feeding and food, wrote to me the following. It's scary to remember. There was a feeling that we experienced everything that happened already before. Some men pushed women and children to escape. The police threatened them with sticks. The children cried. Everyone crushed each other. It's scary to even remember. But faith in God gave me strength. I hugged my son, who was 7. I hugged my son and said, you must believe that everything will be fine. Faith only in the fact that nothing will happen and we'll see a peaceful sky. I asked you, do you believe? My son answered, yes, Mom, I believe in your words. And as long as we are together, I can't guarantee what's going to happen in the Ukraine, but I can guarantee as long as we work together, everybody. And thank you, Gideon, for putting together such a smorgasbord of New York, because New York is one big happy smorgasbord. As long as we work together, we increases the chances of helping every person that needs help. And we have to keep remembering and not get tired, because this is tiresome. And we just have to keep helping.
Thank you. Thank you very much all. And we look forward to continuing this conversation and continuing our work together. Thank you all, and wishing everyone good evening. Thank you.